Hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode. We have very special guest Jodie Campbell, who is a functional medicine coach. And yeah, she has made regular appearances in many of our fermentation festivals, as well as specific classes throughout the years. Over the years, it's been a pleasure to know you, Jodie. Jodie, learn from you and excited to be hosting you for another workshop called The Power of a Healthy Gut, Reclaim Your Digestive Health, and Unlock Your Full Potential. So that's coming up Saturday, January 18th in 2025. Just in case you're watching this later on, it's going to be an afternoon session. You can join in person or online. And this conversation is to get to know Jodie, learn a little bit about the workshop, and we're just chatting kind of prior to hitting record. What are we going to be talking about in this conversation? We're going to be bringing together the pieces of what might be signs or clues, as Jody put it, a cascade of experiences, a whole range that someone might experience that may lead to kind of that, awareness, realization, or dare I even say a diagnosis of some sort of digestive disorder, right? Which is, when people will actually become aware of it, officially, but there's a whole kind of lead up that if you have that top of mind, maybe you might recognize some of those signs, symptoms for yourself. You can stop it earlier before you get to that diagnosis. Or if you do have a diagnosis, you can kind of look back and go, okay, that's what's been going, that's what led to this. And then, of course, most importantly, what to do moving forward. So, anyways, I feel like I've rambled on for too long of an introduction. Let's turn it over to you, Jody. Let's say hello.
Well, I'm always excited to partner with yourself, Malcolm, and the Light Seller, and just share and have conversations with people that maybe are struggling in an area. And I often do find that working in this space, and it's been many years that I've been working with folks that have been just struggling not only with their gut health, but how that has created a cascade effect throughout their whole body, and helping them bring focus, why it happened, and how to stop that cascade and progression, and what is the order of operations to be able to do that, and how do we take the overwhelm and the frustration out of the picture, and really get to what is at the core and how to heal and restore balance to not only just the gut, but the whole body. So mind and
Yeah.
physical.
No, I love your approach. I know you for, quite a number of years, you've made, gut the focus of, your studies and what you help people through. And you had done a class for us on autoimmune and
Mhm.
actually got that up online. People have been
Right,
accessing that since the live session because the information is so relevant, so pertinent.
right.
And I love your approach that, you don't necessarily kind of, like love focusing on the labels or prescribe to that. Again, a client would that's what they know, that's what they identify with, that's what they've been told. But you take this kind of bigger look, this bigger approach. Okay, let's actually just put that aside. Let's just look at your body and its whole functioning because it's all interrelated.
Yeah. The diagnosis doesn't give the path forward. It just
No.
creates overwhelm and this labeling that people get caught up in. So if somebody is working with me, I don't we don't even use that labeling, because I find it actually contributes to the overwhelm, and then it sends them off into Google, which is probably one of the worst things that people can do. Because it doesn't give you any personalized approach, or it does not factor in anybody's health history as to where they are in a particular cascade of gut dysfunction. And that even includes the people that are desperately seeking relief from, any sort of autoimmune dynamic as well. But what I really wanted to focus in on in our conversation today is I just wanted to, maybe the folks that are tuning in will recognize themselves and some of the things that I'm going to talk about if you find yourself in this cascade of gut dysfunction. And I'm going to let people know right now, it is not just the IBS, diverticulitis, the Crohn's, the ulcerative colitis. A lot of people who are experiencing dysfunction in their gut do not have any gut dysfunction. They're not identifying maybe with a lot of the labels that go along with gut dysfunction, but maybe they're dealing with depression. They have arthritis, they have anemia, they have headaches, and they find themselves going, why is this happening? And then there's no understanding as to how this is related back to their gut, because this is where dis-ease often begins, is in the gut, and then progresses. So don't get caught up in thinking you have to have all of this terrible GI distress to go, oh, that must be where the connection is. It doesn't always manifest itself that way. So some of the first part of the cascade that I want people to maybe they're identifying with is the deficiency driven dysfunction of the gut, where maybe we're in a state of maldigestion leading to malabsorption of nutrients. Well, what does that look like? So in that kind of first step of that cascade, that's your anemia, neuropathy, depression, headaches. Okay. And then people then start compartmentalizing all of those pieces, because they've often been to the doctor a few different times to kind of get support. Why am I fatigued? Why am I getting headaches? But they're not actually realizing the root of it is starting with maldigestion and malabsorption, which is the gut, manifesting dysfunction elsewhere in the body. So that's really important to understand. So it's kind of right at the beginning of that cascade. And then kind of the second part of that cascade, so there's another layer to it. So that never really truly resolves. And then we start to see that gastrointestinal dis-ease. The IBS diagnoses start coming out because the physician maybe doesn't really know why. They just know that there's either constipation or diarrhea, cramping, bloating, but IBS is just kind of a catch-all, right, diagnosis. And then in this chart, we start seeing hormones becoming dysregulated, microbes, maybe they're noticing there's more infections, motility, diarrhea, constipation, layered on top of already this deficiency-driven dysfunction, right? And then it just kind of builds, and it doesn't happen all at once. It just kind of starts to land on people's radar. And, it definitely starts to have an impact on their relationships and their social life and how they're able to show up as themselves. They start to not trust their body because they don't know what's going on. What's wrong with me? Am I broken? Why is this happening? And then that third layer is more of that GI inflammation, that enhanced gut permeability. If the deficiency driven is allowed to continue, the gastro dis-ease, and now we have this inflammation that starts to build, what now includes the immune system. And this starts looking like osteoarthritis, asthma, migraines, the chronic fatigue, the fibromyalgia, the eczema, allergies, right? So it's this continuous build, and then people don't realize, oh my goodness, this was happening. They start looking back, and we start digging into the health history, and they go, wow, why was this never a conversation in the doctor's office? Why it was just always about what do we do to triage these symptoms, but we're not getting to the root of why this is all manifesting itself. And it all goes back to the gut.
Right.
That's why we need to start there. And then that last part of the cascade, which is what we're seeing on this immune dysregulation, is autoimmune dis-ease. And I work with a lot of even kids now starting at the age of 12 receiving these types of diagnosis, all the way up to people in their 70s and 80s. And then when we start looking back in the history and we start looking at the labs and we start looking at those pieces, we realize, wow, this started a long time ago before even a diagnosis was made. So why did that happen?
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to discuss in this workshop. What contributes to that kind of that first stage, that maldigestion and malabsorption of nutrients, because that's really where you have to go back and start doing that work. Yes, we want to bring some relief to some of those symptoms, but to truly get to the core of what's going on here, we got to go all the way back to the beginning when this cascade started. So it takes work, it takes commitment, right? You don't just wake up one day with a diagnosis of an autoimmune or with chronic fatigue or with migraines, right? This is a steady build in a cascade to that point. So that's what we're going to talk about
Yeah.
it's a lot. I do want to make sure that people, if they're identifying with anything that I'm sharing here, that they're given an opportunity to ask those questions. Where do I start? What's the first thing, couple of things that people could be focusing in on that are actionable, that they can do?
Well, that sounds amazing. Yeah, love that you are going to give people this insight, whether they again have arrived at some sort of diagnosis or they could be able to catch it, right? So they don't go down that path. And then, as you shared, you'll have this kind of, this pathway forward for people to kind of move through, come back to a life of, being symptom free. And maybe just share with us, because I know you do work one-on-one with clients. You're very busy with that. You've helped people with all kinds of different quote unquote diagnoses, which I love that you don't focus on because you just treat the person in their whole
Right.
body. Maybe you share kind of an example or two of some of the success stories that you've had because, like you said, it's not a quick overnight fix because, well, you didn't arrive there overnight. But what gives people, that hope, that inspiration is hearing other stories of like, okay, somebody was once like this, and then they turn things around because,
Right.
when you face these types of, diagnoses or kind of a daily, chronic condition, you can get disheartened of like, will I ever be able to turn this
Totally.
around?
Yeah. So maybe one of the most recent examples that I could share with somebody is a lot of times people reach out to me and they're not having any sort of GI distress, but maybe it's I can think of the most common one is anemia.
Mhm.
Energy is just absolutely rock bottom, and I'm talking extreme fatigue. Um, and this is really common. So when I go back to the wording that on my intake forms and things people are really wanting relief from, it's why is energy so low? And they probably have had multiple doctor's appointments. And the only thing that often gets put in their place is some sort of SSRI or maybe some sort of iron supplement. And when I'm then working with that client and we're going through some of their blood work and we actually start seeing, okay, yeah, definitely iron is low, but why is the iron low? They're a meat eater. They have a really diverse diet. There's iron accessible, like available in their dietary choices. Why? Why are we in a state of anemia? And then when we actually start breaking down and looking at things, we start seeing, oh, there's a bit of a pattern here. We're also low in B12, and we can see that manifesting itself in their red blood cell markers. And then we start seeing, oh, your white blood cell count is really quite elevated. We have some immune engagement as well. And we start putting the pieces of their puzzle together and we start asking those questions, but really they're only focused on the anemia part of it. But how did that anemia really get to the state that it was in? And it literally went back to maldigestion, not having enough stomach acid to break that food down, making minerals and nutrients to be able to be absorbed in that small intestine. So they were in a state of maldigestion leading to malabsorption. Okay, now this is a common conversation because anemia left unchecked for a long period of time starts to affect the thyroid, starts to affect red blood cell production, all of these things where iron is needed. Now we start seeing this cascade of symptoms beyond the body that just did not have access to such a core nutrient. And really, the only conversation at the doctor's office prior was here, just take an iron supplement, which wasn't helping. It's a heavy metal and it was creating a lot more dysfunction than actually helping. So then our conversation then becomes okay, that's where the body is struggling. We can see how the lack of iron is having a cascade effect in the body and in other systems. Now, what do we do? Right? Now we have to go back to the gut and start assessing, do we have enough stomach acid on board? What does the lifestyle look like? Why are we not secreting enough stomach acid? And then helping helping that person then discover, where is it in the lifestyle? Maybe they're in a state of fight or flight, stress. That is literally a conversation that I have on a daily basis with folks. And that is just how simple it can be, where someone is in that cascade, right? And then how do we go about reversing that? Well, we have to go back to the gut and start restoring there. So then we look at what is going on in the lifestyle that maybe is keeping the body in fight or flight, that is halting digestive secretions like stomach acid. And then we start there, and then we support the body. And then when the body is able to digest and absorb, then we actually start seeing symptoms beyond the gut starting to resolve, because now we've identified where that issue is, and then life becomes a lot better. So if you think about that, even just from a deficiency driven dysfunction, do you think you're only deficient in iron? No. We're going to start seeing low magnesium, B vitamins, all of these really critical nutrients that are needed, because usually it's never just anemia. That's just maybe the one that they're associating with that extreme fatigue. And then that just really opens up a fantastic conversation about how actually really they can take back control, and that the body isn't broken. It's just a lot of these symptoms, just people just grind through, and they just really don't know where to start. And then that's a really great conversation though. So that is a common conversation that I have with folks. And we go from there, breaking down all of the layers. And then I think one of the things people get most frustrated about is like, how come I didn't know this? How come this is not, I don't know, why did I have to get this sick before I even had a conversation like this? This is just not accessible. And the information is out there. It's just, how do you put all of the pieces of one's puzzle together and know where to even start when there's so many symptoms on the radar? Maybe they're unsure of where they are in this cascade of gut dysfunction. So you can turn things around just by even seeing if nutritional deficiencies are part of the dysfunction, and I've never seen it where they aren't. Yeah.
Yeah, and that might be surprising to somebody, like, oh, but we're in, this modern society with so much food, and even somebody who's eating, like you mentioned, like really good food. And
Yeah.
it's, well, it all comes down to, if what you digest, if you can't digest it, if you can't, absorb it, assimilate it, like it's more than just the food that you put in your body. There's all those other, elements that need to be sorted.
Yeah. Another recent example I have of a client is thinking that chronic constipation was normal, and it
Right.
was their normal. Well, chronic constipation um, is terrible for the body, and that can really create a lot of nervous system dysregulation and keeping a body in fight or flight from that perspective. But what people have to look at and go down is figuring out what was happening prior, to that constipation and that lead up. And we do find there's deficiency in nutrients. We talk about hormones and microbes all have to be a part of that conversation. It's not just go drink more water and eat more fiber. I hear
Yeah.
that too. I hear that. Is that important? For sure, but that is not the catch-all be-all for constipation. It's such a more broader conversation to be had. So in this workshop, I really want people to understand that cascade, be able to identify maybe where they are in that cascade, and then where they need to go back and start putting their focus to get relief from all of the symptoms that are jumping onto the radar screen for them. So it is going to be a really fun, interactive workshop. I love it when people come asking questions and, really wanting to be engaged, and they're really wanting to take something actionable from a workshop where it's not just information and education is important, 100%. But what I really want people to do is go, you know what, if I actually just focused on one or these two things and was consistent, yeah, I'm going to start seeing some results from that.
Mhm.
So that's what I really want people to understand is the power of their gut. If they can harness that and realize if you put your focus there, all of these things that are cascading throughout the body, you're going to start to see them. It's going to shift and they're going to start to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. It's almost like the digestion analogy, like you'll be presenting the good information, like the good food, and then it's going to come down,
Mm.
like really key, like digest it, absorb it, assimilate it,
Yeah,
change your life for the better. So yeah, really appreciate it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I hope is by the time everybody attends that workshop is that what they have on their radar is to become a gut geek, basically. If you can harness that skill set and be a little bit nerdy in and around your friends, and you have even just a basic understanding of how the gut supports your health, you will be so much further ahead in life and getting a resolution to the symptoms that you're experiencing for sure. Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, there it is. There's the invitation. Come be a gut geek. Join the crew. Someone like Jodie, who's really spent a good chunk of her life, pursuing this information because, like you said, it's not commonly available, thought about, or implemented. We have to seek out these alternative paths, and that's why Light Seller exists, and that's why Light Seller puts on these classes, and why Jodie has her practice, and why we've come together to offer this. So if you are at all interested, if you're inspired, if you know somebody who this information is going to be so key, it's going to be Saturday, January 18th. It's a 1 till 3. That's Mountain Standard Time, kind of middle of the afternoon. You can join in person or you can join online. Or if it's one of those things that like, man, I really know I need this, but you can't make those times, we record it. So you're going to get the recording and you'll get any kind of notes afterwards as well. And yeah, it's going to be fantastic for those that are there. So thanks so much, Jodie, for sharing a little bit of insight this morning, and looking forward to the workshop coming up this weekend.
Okay, awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing many on Saturday.
All right, bye for now. Go to lightseller.ca for more details and registration.